In this demonstration you will learn how to create a delegate command class that implements the iCommand interface. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Here I've opened the Customers App project that you can download from the course homepage on pluralsight.com. Now let's right-click the project in the Solution Explorer and let's select from the context menu Add New Folder. I call the new folder Command. Now let's right-click this command folder and let's select from the context menu Add Class. Let's give the class the name Delegate Command and let's add it to the project. Now first, let me remove here the unnecessary usings by pressing Ctrl-. And let's also make this a public class in our project. Now on this class, let's implement the iCommand interface. I press Ctrl-. to add a using directive for the System Windows Input namespace. Now I press Ctrl-. again to implement this interface in this class. As you can see, here are the two methods of the command and the CanExecuteChanged event. Now first, let's define here in this command class a constructor and let's use the CTOR snippet. I press the tab key twice to insert a constructor. On the constructor, let's define a parameter of type action for the execute logic. As you can see, the execute method has an object parameter. So on that action delegate, which is a generic delegate, let's specify here an object parameter and let's call it execute. I press Ctrl-. to create and assign that parameter to a field with the name execute. As you know already, I prefer to start fields with an underscore. So let's rename this to _execute and let's get rid here in the constructor of the this keyword. Now let's scroll down to the execute method. In this method, you can now just call that execute delegate with the parameter that you get in this method. As it is just this single statement, you can also simplify this method by using an expression body. So let's do this and let's write here an expression body. And I press Ctrl-KD to format this. And now we have a clean execute method that uses here the action delegate. Now in the constructor, I want to check that this execute delegate is not null. So let's use here the argument null exception and its static throw if null method. And let's pass in here that execute parameter. The next step is to define a delegate for the CanExecute method. As you can see, this one has an object parameter and it returns bool. To define a delegate with a return value, you can use the funcDelegate. First, let's specify the object parameter, and then, as a last generic argument, you define the return type, which is in this case the type bool. Let's call this delegate CanExecute. Now in the constructor, I define an underscore CanExecute field and I assign that parameter value to that field. Let's press Ctrl-. to generate that field in our class. Now you can see it here. The CanExecute delegate should be optional, because sometimes you have commands that you can always execute. So let's make this an optional constructor parameter by setting it here to null. As it can be null, you should also add here a question mark to make it obvious. This means also on the field a question mark is needed. Now let's implement the CanExecute method. Let's add here a return statement and let's check if that CanExecute field is null, and if that's the case, let's return true, and else you return the result of the CanExecute delegate. Now interesting is, when you press Ctrl-. Visual Studio suggests here to simplify this conditional expression. Let's hit enter to do this. Now you see the logical OR operator is used. If CanExecute is null, true is returned from this method. If it is not null, that's the OR operator, then the CanExecute delegate is executed and the result from that delegate is returned. Now as this is also a single statement, let's make this also a method with an expression body. This means you can get rid of the return keyword. Let's also remove this closing curly. Now you see, you have here this nice expression body for the canExecute method. The final bit that you need to implement is a method that allows you to raise the canExecute changed event on a delegate command instance. To do this, let's create in this class a public void method that I call raise canExecute changed. Let's make this also a method with an expression body. Let's use the canExecute changed event. Let's check if it is not null, and then let's invoke it. You want to invoke it for this instance, and let's pass in empty event args to that event. So now this delegate command class is implemented and you can use it in the view models. Let's do this in the next clip.